We are live now. I'm going to wait for a few minutes for everyone to join, although I am going to save this for anyone who is not able to see right now. Thank you for joining. Corn on the cob. Oh, Nahme, Nazanin, thank you for joining. Sheila, you're with us. Rosemarie, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you. I'm very excited for us to have this conversation. Um, I encourage you to stop me at any point and ask questions or add to what I'm saying, Sheila. I just want to introduce us to everybody. My name is Dr. Bahara Sahibi. I'm a clinical psychologist and a licensed marriage and family therapist located in the metropolitan Chicago area. And I have a private practice. I'm also an instructor, a supervisor, and lately I've been writing a whole lot of Iranian pieces because I specialize in trauma and families and couples, and being able to see how this has impacted each and every one of us is so important to me. And as my pieces that I've been writing are going to be published little by little, I thought it would be a great idea for us to kind of talk about all of this because this is such a um, lonely experience to have. And each one of us may be experiencing it differently, but there are ways that all of it comes together, that we do have a collective experience in together. Sheila, how about yourself?
Thank you, Dr. Bahar. I wanted just to thank you for being a consummate advocate in the mental health community in our diaspora. And so I do think this conversation is very important. And I will be helping you kind of monitor questions so you can answer. But I guess I will start with a question for you. I wanted to talk about the Iranian Revolution and how what does it mean psychologically? And is this just, again, is this a sequential, political event, or is this collective trauma? Like, could you maybe start with that and share what your thoughts are on that?
That's a really good question. I should mention to everybody that you are also a very talented um, uh, clinician who is in Florida. So I wanted to make sure everybody knows that as well. We have our own little community of Iranian diaspora. Therapists that we keep in touch. So I appreciate you being here and keeping track of the questions. Also, if you could please check me with time, because I have a tendency to get very passionate about some of the stuff to answer, and I may go a little over. So please help me with that as well.
Sure,
So
absolutely.
I want to make sure that our what we're going to be talking about today is, it's not about a political debate. It's a trauma-informed dialogue, really. So when a nation bleeds, something happens, and it's not only political, because it's so easy for us to just focus in on the political. And I'm not a political analyst. So anybody who asks me, what are your thoughts? What are your opinions? I can give those, but they don't stand solid ground on anything other than just my opinions when they're political. I do not have an analysis. They're based on my emotions and my thoughts. But I can tell you a whole lot about the trauma-informed dialogue around this nation bleeding and the transnational effect of it on the rest of us who are not in Iran. So it's something that happens not only politically, but neurologically. It's relationally, generationally. It affects all of us. And it's really important for us to name it. So this January 2026 was not just a massacre and a crackdown. It wasn't just that. It was a psychological rupture. It was, I would say, it's a nervous system event at a national scale. And as I said, transnational, because it's impacting um, 10 million Iranians worldwide. Iran is not only in a political crisis right now, it is also in collective trauma. And that's a really important thing for us to make sure that we continue to focus on, and not just the politics of it, because at the end of all this, we are human and we are going to be affected now and whatever may come after. Trauma changes how we think, how we feel, how we organize, and how we imagine the future, right? So, there are some pieces that I wrote about collective trauma recently in the last couple weeks that I'm going to draw upon to uh, kind of talk about how I see it from a clinician's perspective. When we think about trauma, we tend to look at the individual a whole lot, right? Like the person has PTSD, the person has experienced trauma. It's the person, but this is not that. Trauma is not just individual. It's not only PTSD. It could be, but it's not. It's when an entire population loses psychological safety and safety in institutions collapses, whether it was real or not internally. Predictability collapses, trust collapses, not just in the systems, but in each other, right? Collective trauma is what happens when violence becomes systemic and chronic. And we've had that as a population. When danger is no longer episodic, it becomes atmospheric. It's everywhere. We're experiencing all the time. But if you do want to bring it back to the individual, it is something that the nervous system is experiencing too from the within. If we were looking at it from outside, now looking at it from within, it's a nervous system diminishing process. I've personally experienced that in the last month or so, where I've lost track of time. I don't even know where time goes when I sleep, when I wake up. And I know I'm not alone in this. So when I'm talking about the nervous system diminishing, I'm talking about hypervigilance. I'm talking about fragmented sleep. I'm talking about alternating rage and numbness. Survival mode cognition is always at play. And the body doesn't really parse these ideologies. It responds to threat. It's very real inside of us. And if you tell us something outside of it, it will be triggering. And when we're looking at Iran specifically, that layered trauma in Iran it's not a now thing. It was a 1979, whatever you want to call it, that resulted in so much pain afterwards, so many massacres, an 8-year war, the impact of sanctions on civilian populations, while the IRGC became more, they became more rich and they were able to get away with more. Migration patterns and the experience of loss over and over again. It's that ambiguous loss. We can't count on our friends from inside because they're going to leave. They're going to come and they're going to announce they're migrating. Our families, it's just never going to be the same. We've always been in this limbo feeling. Even if we are in Iran or outside, it's just we can't count on anything or anyone really, because it's all constantly shifting and changing because of, directly because of the Islamic Revolution, the Islamic Republic's revolution. And also, there have been repeated protest crackdown over the years, and we've sat there through them. I've had the pleasure of meeting you during the Women Life Freedom movement, and these experiences have brought us together in a trauma bond form, right? Now we're in 2026, and now this collective trauma has not reset between the generations and experiences. It's layered, right? So, what trauma does to the society, trauma really narrows our cognition, our ability to think. We tend to get into black and white thinking. That increases. If we already had it, it's going to get worse. There is a certainty feeling of feelings of safer than nuance. It's almost like savior fantasies that
Mhm.
start to rise. If we only do this, if we only do this, if I don't do this, then I'm not participating. We've always talked about that guilt that comes up if we are not experiencing it personally in Iran and we're removed from it. And also, I think one of the worst parts is the polarization intensifies, where we can't even have conversations with each other. We become accusatory. So when survival feels uncertain, then complexity becomes intolerable. We cannot have conversations where there are nuances in mind. And this is like a brain mechanism. The brain seeks clarity. Trauma collapses ambiguity. You cannot sit with ambiguity of any sort. And anyone who challenges the what ifs and this could be or that could be, that we have to reject and push away. And I've personally been on the receiving end of that because I like to um, think through all the processes. And even the closest people to me are not able to have those conversations. And I understand them. I came here, I left Iran when I was 8 years old. And who am I to tell somebody who left 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, as an adult and has experienced everything over there, that it is more ambiguous than that. So that feeling of I don't have a place to speak about this comes up for many of us. I know that you certainly feel that as well as a person who is half American, half Iranian, and has never been to Iran before, correct?
Yeah, I think that the diaspora, I mean, you're talking about collective trauma. And then I think as someone that's watching this, I'm seeking my people, I'm seeking community. But in the diaspora, there's such a nuanced, complexities, like you said. You have older generations saying nothing's going to change. Why are you getting so emotional about it? You have people on, either end of the political spectrum with different ideologies. Um, and that's really hard to connect with, especially if you haven't had that experience in Iran. I
Yes.
think that there's truly for me, a somatic yearning. I feel that in watching what's happening in Iran. I've always felt that. And
Yes.
sometimes people don't understand that because it's such a visceral experience. But
Yes.
I wanted to ask you two questions. Could you explain more? And whoever's joining us, please, if you have questions, Nazanin, hi, please let me know and we'll try to get them. I'll ask them to Dr. Bahar. But the trauma bond, can you talk about that a little bit? Because
Yes.
a trauma bond can be very, cathartic in some ways, but it also can be in some ways, I don't want to use the word maladaptive, but can
Yes.
be contentious, and that also can bring up a lot of different problems. Can you talk a little bit about the trauma bond in the
Yes.
Iranian diaspora and in Iran itself?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I really like what you just said about it's a visceral feeling that many don't understand. It's almost like we cannot explain how this is a biological mechanism inside of us who haven't lived it in Iran, but are so physiologically, emotionally tied to it, and it gets dismissed, and there's a sense of not belonging anywhere for those of us that either grew up here very at a very young age or were born here. So I want to address that and come to this collective. Um, trauma that has brought us into this trauma bond situation that we're seeking, actually, right? It's not on its own something that's happening alone. It's really tied in with the global silence and why people are looking away. So, explaining psychological responses like that visceral reaction that you talked about, it's not necessarily endorsing political conclusions, but the being able to hear anything other than political conclusions is a difficult thing for many to be able to experience. They're looking for answers, the political answers. Are you with them or with us? There's this binary impact here that does not encompass the human experience of being in this. So I want to explain why, psychologically speaking, why we look away. I'm telling you, I think one of the hardest parts about this is that I honestly feel like I don't have friends. With everybody, I was telling my husband, Jason, that I've gone through 50 years of life and all that I've invested in people and the bonds and the connections that I've had. And even when I send things to them and I want them to see it, they're looking away. So this makes me extremely discouraged, right? Where that I don't belong anywhere, not here. I can't really connect with the Iranian community because they're all looking for that the explanation of not psychological response, but rather endorsing political conclusions. So it's a very difficult place for those of us who are not inside the Iranian community with our friendships, because the world is looking away. So there is another trauma layer happening outside of Iran because of this, and that's the psychology of so many looking away. And I don't know if you've had that experience yet, but it's almost like our code switching has gone another level where we have to almost live a very fake life outside of our real self that's hurting for Iran because nobody's willing to hear us. So, there's a moral disengagement that happens. And this moral disengagement is actually a social psychology term. If you remember back in the day learning about Bandura, he is the one who came up with moral disengagement. And this is when euphoricism or anything related to language starts to clash, right? So it's like kind of like a diffusion of responsibility, if you want to say it like that, or procedural skepticism. I've heard things like before even looking at my videos or pictures that I post constantly on Instagram here, and when I say I just want you to see what's happening, I have literally heard yeah, a lot of those are AI. A lot of those, they're not real. No, you haven't even seen it to see if it's real. We're constantly getting gaslit into your experience and the experience, your experience of witnessing the pain and the experiences of those directly experiencing the pain in Iran is not real. This complexity as it's kind of like anesthetic. It's a numbing. That somebody who would say something like that is just kind of pausing you. It's more complex than that. It's not what you see. It's not what you hear. The numbers aren't real. Where is it verified? Send me the source. You know what I mean? Like that's the most I have heard. And sanitized language creates psychological distance. In the past few weeks, where I've been writing so many articles for so many different outlets to send it to, they keep wanting to sanitize the language of this pain. They don't want to address that the word massacre, for example. They don't want to write the word massacre. They don't want to write the numbers. It's sanitizing the language. So I'm left between, do I just give up and not write about it? Or do I go with what they say so that I can at least get the word out? Because the responsibility that I see for myself, and I'm sure you feel the same way, is we're the connection between Iran and the West. A lot of Iranians are, and the rest of the world in English, a lot of Iranians are um, just regurgitating things among each other, right? Which there's a value in that as well, but we all know what's going on. And there are some of us, I think Nazanin Noor does such a beautiful job in this. So many. Uh, People are working very, very hard to try to be that bridge when they are trying to connect what is actually happening in a language that people can hear, um, outside of the Iranian population. So there's this pluralistic ignorance, if you want to call it that. It's like people think others don't care. Silence becomes normative, right? And institutions hesitate. And then individuals retreat. If my institution that I work at is not sending out an email about it, then I'm not going to address it. It may be too political to address it. And silence is rarely one direction. It's a accumulation of small psychological shifts. I remember during the Masa Amini time, one of my coworkers said, "Well, do you have any family there?" And I was like, "Yeah, 92 million." You know? Like what does that question do? So that's the selective empathy piece, right?
Yeah.
Empathy is shaped by proximity. It's by culture. It's by political um, narratives that has been heard for so long. Yeah, Corn on the Cob gets it. It's all of those, right? The diaspora, the nervous system, what happens to it? Tensions arise. In the US Iranian tensions rise. It's not just within us, but it's not just intra, or inter, it's intra as well. It's with our communities that we're living in. So there's a double bind here, right? Condemn regime, fear of war that we're experiencing, advocate intervention, fear of escalation. I mean, we're living with all of this at all time. And I feel like I am cornered a lot by Iranians saying, you have to say you advocate for war, right? And I don't have to do anything. As a child who grew up during the Iran-Iraq war, I keep repeating this, but it's really important. Watching the planes go by, the Iraqi planes, and throw bombs, and watching the windows of our home shatter over and over again to a point where putting up new windows became ridiculous, and having to put um, uh, blankets instead of windows on the walls, and going to like a friend's birthday party, playing in the backyard, and then finding like an arm of a child from another day's bombings that was nearby. These are not things that have left my body, nor should they. They're experiences that are still happening. Trauma, this, I need everybody to walk away from this. We cannot heal from trauma. We cannot do anything about healing trauma until the threat is gone. Okay. So it doesn't matter how much EMDR we do. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's still going to come back because the threat is now, right? It never left. And that's most of our lives. My generation, you're after me. So you don't even know what it's like even before that, right? So there are few communities in the world who live in that kind of compressed tension for half a century now. And this conditional belonging that we have, those of us who are not living in Iran, when tensions rise abroad, then suspicions rise at home, right? So, and by abroad, I mean in Iran, right? When tension rises over there, all of a sudden we become like, maybe I need to distance myself from Iranians. Maybe I don't know who's who, right? Identity becomes geopolitical. I know you felt this before. How many times have we have wanted people to look at who We are like who I am, but it's always like about where you're from. For
Mhm.
many Iranian Americans, belonging expands and contracts with foreign policy rhetorics. And the survival's guilt plus hyperactivation, all of this formulates it's the perfect ingredient to create that trauma bond that we're talking about. And, I always say this in every one of my classes that every single one of us have one thing in common in this world, one thing, and that is, it doesn't matter, all 7 billion of us, there's one thing that all of us have in common, and that's the need to belong. It's belonging. So when we start feeling like we don't belong to our communities that we live in, and we tend to turn toward each other with the hopes that you get it, you're away. How many times have we texted late at night because it's like the feelings are just suffocating through us, and we're therapists, we are supposed to keep it together. And please don't tell anybody, you're a psychologist, you should know better. Should, first of all, stop shooting on yourselves. That's not going to work. Second of all, we're human. We're
Yeah.
human. Knowing something is not the same as feeling it. So what do? We post constantly. We translate footage. We don't get much rest. We feel invisible. We connect with each other through that trauma bond. I've been nonstop writing. There's been something seriously wrong with, like, I cannot stop writing. And I think that's the only time that I feel really validated, because the paper doesn't jump out at me and diminish the emotions that I'm having. And many in the diaspora feel they they have to do something. It's a betrayal if we don't, even if it's sleep. So that's the long answer to how this trauma forms. I know we're very short on time. There's so many different places that I would like to go. Maybe we can have another live another day with what
Yes.
trauma informed solidarity looks like. I would love for us to talk about intergenerational transmission of trauma, what that looks like, if everybody's here is interested, for another time. Epigenetic research that shows you and I living here, there is a reason why we have this visceral reaction. We actually do have growing epigenetic research to back this up. And how authoritarian systems rely on this nervous system dysregulation. How do they play around with it? It's like they have like the best psychologists to know what to do about this, to get to us and why, and hold us back, and why trauma makes populations susceptible to extremism narratives as well. But there's so many places that we can go when we're talking about how a nation bleeds, that this trauma is coming up for all of us, that is been really, really heavy. And we cannot overlook it. We can't forget about it. I just, before we see if there's at least a person who has a question, I want to make sure that I close with, when a nation is bleeding like Iran, the question is not only who's right and who's wrong politically. It's not that. The question is, what happens to a population? What happens to a population's nervous system? What happens to the trust that they have with each other and with the outside world? What happens to that sense of belonging I just talked about? Trauma, when it's unnamed, it becomes embedded. It really solidifies the pain. But when named, it restores agency. It gets us moving. And that's why the writing has been so helpful to me. So, with that, I like to invite everybody who's been on this call to really sit back and reflect on some of the things that we've talked about. Have some reactions to it. You can send your reactions to me, or the Omid for Iran, the foundation. Am I saying it correctly, in the right
We don't
order?
need Tajik for Iran, but
Thank
yes,
you.
please.
Thank you. Please
Yes.
send your comments, because that will help us be able to use your reflections to build future lives together, and move this forward. I hope this has been helpful.
Yes, I think Corn on the Cob was commenting how to prevent the numbing to achieve sustainability of activism, numbing and burnout.
Yeah.
Um, I think numbing is just par for the course. Like our bodies, like you said, it's so embedded in our central nervous systems that the brain is doing what it needs to. But how do we keep that momentum going? I remember after the Women Life Freedom Movement, I just couldn't, like, it was just too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it was like, it was just too much. I was resentful and I just didn't think I would be able to engage again like this. So that would be a good question to answer in terms of um, not numbing to a default,
Mhm.
but kind of continuing to be able to be present and active in this
That's a
fight.
great question, Corn on the Cob. This is the mechanism that, as Sheila just said, Sheila just said, it's how our nervous system is trying to help us. So numbing is a form of dissociation. You're traumatized. Whether you want to accept it or not, you're traumatized. So your body is going numb because it's trying to dissociate. What do you do with that? You acknowledge it. You don't try to change that, push it forward. You rest, you connect with people that are in the same kind of situation as you, whether you're like an Iranian American who, it's easier to speak with somebody who grew up here, or you're an immigrant from Iran when you came older. Wherever you fall, and we all exist, you find your community and be able to, just one person even online, to be able to then talk to them and come up with solutions of what do I do next. Maybe the one next thing to do is just wherever, what city you're in, you're going to go to a protest next week, and that person's going to be there with you. Maybe that's all it is. You're still numb, but you're showing up for it. Do not push that boundary too hard, because we cannot be in control of how our nervous system, what the messages our nervous system is trying to tell us. But conversations are really good to have. I think therapy is a very important tool that none of us should overlook. I think we all deserve it. We all need space for it. Doesn't even matter if we're therapists or not. Make sure your therapist is somebody who's going to get it, who's not trying to overlook it to pathologize it. This isn't our pathology. This is the Islamic Republic's pathology, the system's pathology that we have been collectively carrying. It's not ours. We are perfectly healthy and normal in the way that we're responding to the pain. So that would be my answer for Corn on the Cob.
I'm going to ask the one last question before we close, and thank you to everyone that joined. I think I would love to see another live about solidarity, trauma, like, the solidarity even in the face of trauma. I want to ask you, because this is a question I ask everyone in the diaspora or in Iran, what keeps us being resilient?
Very good question. Resilience is a whole other topic that when you learn about human resilience, family resilience, transgenerational resilience, cultural resilience, you will no longer feel like you have to do something to stay resilient. What keeps us resilient is beyond what you and me are trying to do for ourselves. It's a trust that we are a population that has endured so much over centuries, right? But forget the centuries. If you don't want to go back that far, over decades, where every time something has happened, we have thought, this is it. I'm not going to survive this. Like, I can't deal with it. Yet somehow we keep going and we keep coming together collectively and we keep pushing forward. So don't try so hard is my answer. Stay grounded. Do as much grounding things that you can: music, walking in nature, um, connecting with water, air, beautiful sceneries. I connect with my dogs. Like, without my dogs, I don't know, they keep me resilient. Whatever you have to, if you have a talent of some sort, music, writing, anything, connect with those personal strengths that you have, and just know that you're doing the best that you can. Even if you're just witnessing, that's going to keep it going, and it's keeping you resilient. Sometimes, like Corner on the Cop said, we need to disconnect, and so that we can come back better and harder at this. We all feel it. It's only because we're human. But our human resilience, our Iranian resilience, is not something that we're controlling. We are resilient, and we're going to be resilient no matter what happens. That I'm sure of.
I agree. I definitely agree. Thank you so much for this live. I definitely want to do more of these. You're fantastic. So much knowledge. And I just, for the mental health community, Dr. Bahar is writing lots of articles, but also you've done some really good work when we did the suicide detection and screening. I mean, you've been working on trying to get that some of these assessments translated in Farsi. I mean, these are like huge things for our community that we need. Like you said, we need to be able to have um, therapists in the community that understand this and have the tools. So
Yeah.
thank you for your immense abundance of knowledge, and you are Shirzan for sure, and I appreciate you. And I think
Right
we should
back
definitely
at you.
we
Shada.
should definitely do another one. I would love to see the
Absolutely.
solidarity. So if you want anyone in the audience, please message Omid Project for Iran or Dr. Bahar with topics that you would like. Also, we have other people in our community that hopefully we can share and shed light on their
Yeah. And
experiences.
your feedback about all of this. I know that
Yeah,
one thing that was making me hesitant to come to talk is that it's going to have to be in English.
yeah,
I can speak in Farsi ولی مثل 7 ساله ها حرف میزنم. نمیتونم مثل دکتر حرف بزنم. I can't speak like a doctor, like a professional. I sound like a 7-year-old. So, and that's another, thing that really bothers me, and that's has made me hesitant to come. But in our community, we have both, and we need to rely on each other. So we'll have the English versions, will have the Farsi versions, because we have very talented clinicians who are Farsi speakers, and
yes.
we'll continue this dialogue going. We will take any feedback that you all have in our DMs. It'll all be important to us. I'll also save this and post them. So if you feel like it was valuable to you and you would like to share it with others, please do so. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon. We'll announce the next time we'll have one.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bahar. Thank you, everyone that joined. It means a lot. This community, whatever time you give, it's tremendous. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Take
Bye,
care.
all. Bye.
Bye.